Hello all. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you for inviting us from the IFC to Kapoor. Really glad to see this great momentum to do sustainable development and high quality projects. I'm here to share some of our kind of concerns, but also some of our ideas on how to transform the market towards a more sustainable future. And I hope you'll find this to be fairly practical in terms of how we're approaching it. And some of our solutions are really relevant for Colombia too. So let me begin with explaining what we as the World Bank see happening across the world, right? Emerging markets where we work are going through a huge growth spur. Essentially, countries like India are doubling in building stock. In about, say, 20 years, China still, would you believe, has 250 million people still to bring into cities. Most of you in Latin America are fairly urbanized. You probably don't see the urbanization the same way, but in the rest of the world, rest of the emerging countries, that is still a big concern, and not concern, actually, it's seen as an opportunity as much as anything else. But combined with rising income, population growth, urbanization, that is putting a lot of pressure on not just the urban systems, but climate change as well. Buildings today pollute, as you may know, 20% of all the GHGs in the world come from buildings. And if you think that this number is going to double, which is what is predicted, if nothing is done, then the share of that building is going to be like 40%, which is typical what you would see in a developed country. So as countries get more and more developed, the percentage starts to become a bigger number. And that is the challenge that we feel has to be tackled in some way, because it's also an opportunity to kind of look at this. When you look at developed countries, when I say developed, I mean sort of the West generally, a lot of the built infrastructure is already there. So, and it's in a poor way, and it's very difficult now to retrofit it. If you look at it from the point of view of, as an opportunity, this is the chance for us to get green construction embedded into our buildings that are being built in these countries, and really start to scale up. As you all know, Colombia itself has got a strong focus on housing demand, and meeting that demand. I think the projection is about 1 million new homes are required. And that is also a great opportunity to tackle this. Now, those are high economic numbers, but I met this lady, Maria, in Medellin, that ski lift that you go up, and this is in the social housing. She pays roughly about $200 mortgage, which she has. And she's holding a piece of paper which she was sharing with us when Kristen and I met her. And she has a $40 utility bill, okay? So that gives you a sense of proportion as to how significant something like that is for a low to middle income, families, essentially. So it could be a reasonably, it's not just about kind of doing greater good and climate change, but also in a practical level, tackling energy efficiency and resource efficiency could really mean, people like Maria have more expendable income to spend on other things that matter to her family and quality of life. But as the pressure of urbanization happens, as you can see, economics, the urbanization and climate change is going to grow. The question is how can we deal with this? The issue isn't so much technology. I mean, technology has been there for most of my career. There's a little bit of new stuff, but really it's not that. So why isn't already, some of these things happening? The World Economic Summit shared that 80% of all value, economic value, is left out of the table when it comes to buildings, much more than any other sector. Things that really make sense, give you payback within a year are not done. And why is it not happening is the question we asked ourselves. This is one reason we feel there is, as we call it, misalignment of incentives, I call it a circle of blame. I'll explain why. Because if you ask each of yourselves, would you like to live in an energy efficient house? I'm sure the answer would be yes. Why not, right? If you ask a developer, would he like to build it? He would say yes, but there's no funding for this. Where's it all going to come from? And if you ask the financial people, the question is, there is no demand. So there is a whole circular blame that happens in this sector particularly, because the person who builds, who finances, and lives in it are all disjointed in a way. So how can one break this cycle is one question. Next, I would say most people, perceive, and you guys are in the construction industry too, perceive cost of doing green or energy efficient technology as very high. I mean, the statistics, there was a World Green Building Council study that showed that people perceive about 29%, almost 30% higher cost for green features in their projects. When the reality is it's more like 1 to 2%. Our own analysis of, we've been working with the government on green building codes, suggests that it's very marginal. It could be as low as 1%, especially if it's done in early design stage. So how do we get that point across, and how do you get access to what works when? The other question is, what features really make sense? What have the right payback? The current design teams are structured not to deliver that. Architects are there to do good design and move on. Engineers are there to make sure things don't fall apart. And so right now, there's nobody with the clear incentive to make sure that energy is reduced for the end customer, right? So the question is, how can you have access to that information at the early design stage, but also know how much things cost? That's the other question I feel like we need to tackle before we can find solutions to this. And finally, you need, as a private sector bodies, you need to know how can you market. If you're putting all this, are you able to increase the value of the property? Who pays, essentially, right? Because there is a cost, however small. How do you pass on the cost to the end customers? The customer is not aware. And if you ask the banks, why don't you provide a slightly higher mortgage to the end customer? They said, oh, we don't know. They are very conservative about this. So again, there is this issue of the same kind of circular blame issue, but it's also marketability issue. There's very little trust in the system. Do your home buyers really trust you when you say you're green? How do you market your projects to really be authentic and real? And our sense is that it has to be about numbers. And I'll come back to that again. It has to be about being unsubjective, being objective about what you produce and what you share, and really be focused on creating that value which is tangible. And that's kind of the way we are looking at this. But before I go there, this is not a new idea, right? This coming up with the new labeling system and the certification system has been around for a long time, at least 10 years at least in most markets. But most of these kind of platforms really address the higher end of the market, mostly commercial, mostly kind of, the ones that are international Class A office types. They tend to go for the LEED and the BREEAM and the rest. But the rest of the market, which is really the bulk of the market, really are not engaged. So how can we democratize this and make sure everybody has access to this, way of kind of measuring and labeling, essentially? And the sense is, World Bank IFC feels like each of our emerging countries needs something that is simple, that is quick, and that's scalable. Because if it isn't any of those, it's a niche, and it's good to do those things. It creates leadership. You need to have leadership, and that's why these things are known in the market. But how do you really scale this up? This is the challenge we took on, and you're probably wondering, why is the World Bank even doing this? And this is the real reason why we got into this in the first place. We felt we had something to offer, which is that we can bring people together. So starting with the government, we've been working, Kristen has been working, I've been working with the Colombian government, and I'll come to that as well, for the last 5 years, working on building codes, green building codes, having energy efficiency built in, and Chemical has been a great strategic partner to get the voice of the private sector heard. So that's one element already in place. The second element is the voluntary certification system. We feel like there needs to be something where private sector can get themselves assessed, and they can get a certificate that shows that works. And I'll come back to how that helps. And finally, the last piece, but the most important piece, is finance. That's the elephant in the room. Both finance for construction, that is green, but also finance for the end customer. And there is a lot of things happening in this market. We've been fairly successful in the last few years to really mobilize. From green mortgages, great lessons from Mexico, which could be transferred here. Hypothetica birthday, I think it's called. And then, you know, green bonds, we've just done a great green bond for construction finance for banks. In India, for example, we've done this in Turkey, in Kenya, and we're expanding this portfolio. So if you can have liquidity, it's because when it comes to finance, unlike, say, renewable energy, you know, solar power, where you need new money to invest in these things, in the case of construction, it's about diverting the finance from brown to green. Okay? So that's really the crux of our four-pronged strategy to make this happen. And we are already kind of in the process of getting there in some of the countries, you know, and I can share some of that maybe later on. But on the Colombian front, I'm really excited here because it's a milestone for us. We're going to be signing a great relationship with Cameco as a strategic partner to make it happen here too. But before I go forward, the crux, the core of our idea, because all these things are great, we can bring people together, but what is the new thing that we're bringing in here? The new thing is edge, and we feel that is the solution that is really missing in this whole thing. Okay? To break some of those key things that I brought out, you know, perception of cost, not having information on what works, having a scalable certification platform, all of those things. But at the crux of it, we've created three genuine new ideas. One is a software, which I want to share with you, which will really make it simple and affordable for you to use. It's really free, frankly. It has a lot of data, and I hope you're excited about it too. The second is we had to go back to the drawing board and simplify what green building means in today for scale-up phase. So we simplified it to be at 20%. I'll explain how that works. And finally, by organically, we found ourselves doing certification as well. And we are finding strategic partners to offer this, and I'll explain how that works. So that's broadly the three elements. So firstly, starting with the standard. It's very simple. We focused on things that we can count. Okay? Focused on things that really matter to Maria in terms of saving costs. Because if you don't, in emerging countries, if you don't make economic sense to the end customer, you're never going to be able to scale this, right? So that's why we focused on a minimum standard performance of 20% energy, 20% water, and 20% embodied energy. I'll come back to that later and explain how that works as well. But you may be wondering 20% of what? And that's why we created the tool. So it's a kind of multi-pronged approach. I'll quickly share the tool with you. It's a little video, and it may be a little finicky, but it's the first time we're trying this out, the video part, so bear with me. Okay.
Today we'll decide.
Could we increase the sound, please?
Office building with Edge. From edgebuildings.com, click on Edge app. First, I check that I've selected the right building type from the choices of homes, hotels, retail, offices, or hospitals. Enter the fields that are required to save your project. Once again, I'll click the country and the city. For my building data, I'll increase the number of floors to 20. And include one floor below grade. For the space allocation, I can always accept the defaults if I don't know the information at the early design stage. In Sao Paulo, I want to make certain my building has a north-south orientation. As soon as I indicate this, I have positive savings in my energy and water tabs. We now have created our base case building. Next, we will meet the EDGE standard, which requires 20% less energy, water, and embodied energy and materials. EDGE deliberately doesn't show the best options. Instead, it's up to you to explore what works best for your project's climate and the lifestyles of your customers. Our project's base case reflects the energy use before any design selections have been made. Our improved case will change as we make decisions. The difference between the base case and the improved case must reach 20% to achieve the EDGE standard. The percentage corresponds to the amount of money your customers will save on utility bills. The colors in the chart correlate to the energy consumption breakdown of the building. as well as to the colors of the energy saving measures. Let's choose external shading devices, Lowy coated glass, a radiant cooling system with a high COP, and energy efficient lighting. I can see that my extra cost to build my green building is about $148,000 US and has a payback period of about 2 years before my office building is only saving me significant money that I otherwise wouldn't have had. It's critical to watch these fields as you go about making your green selections to keep an eye on costs. If I want more information, I can click on a measure and see a tooltip. I can then click on more information for a deeper level of information in the user guide. Between my building orientation and my radiant cooling system, I'm more than halfway to my required water savings. I'll choose a few practical solutions and ensure my building conserves water more efficiently than a typical building. For materials, let's select concrete filler slab for both the floor slabs and roof construction. To discover the baseline assumption, we can click on the material. And we see that the thickness is 200 millimeters with 20 kilograms per meter square of steel. For external and internal walls, we'll choose autoclaved aerated concrete walls. My building is ready for certification. There's more information on how to certify a project by clicking on Homepage, then Certify. We hope this demo has been helpful and that you enjoy using Edge.
All right. It was I don't know what you thought of that, but you know, it's nice to have an American accent doing the demo sometimes, right? But look, I think I wanted to make sure I don't miss anything because I'm a deeply technical person. I get very excited when I do these things. So it was, I was trying to kind of make sure it was very well paced so that you understood. I just want to clarify a couple of things. One, it's totally free. We're not here to sell you a software that you will be paying money for. So the idea is that we've invested millions of dollars collecting this information. It looks very simple on the facade, but behind it is about 30 people working on this for the last, I don't know, 6 years. And a lot of information, a lot of database, including cost. We've been collecting cost from various countries, adjusting it for purchasing power parity. It is not perfect, but it will, as you use it, as we get better, it has machine learning, it will get better as it goes. Yeah, that's the concept behind it. So if you got your phone, as a lot of you are using it, type in edgebuildings.com and you'll find access to this. You can use it on your phone. It's not yet fully designed for that, but you know, it's best to use it. But just look at that and get a sense of what this is about. There's a lot more information on the website on projects that we have certified. We've done quite a few already. And you know, some of the interesting features of this. But look, tool is a tool, essentially. How do we really scale this up? But you can see the fundamental problem that I started this, you know, my career with is that how do you get access to this information at a very early stage? I hope you can see that the tool allows you to do this. And it's in Spanish, by the way, and Portuguese as well. All of this that you just saw. So you can have a look at that too. So let me go back to the rest of my slides. So we also had to simplify how certification works. Today, certification for buildings can cost anything like $100,000. You know, we see that in Mexico. How can we bring the cost really down so that it is appropriate for scale up? Okay, that's one thing we have really focused on. Highly automated. We made the simplification on what you ask, as well as the standard has really made the process much simpler, and we're able to do this at a fraction of the cost that you normally see elsewhere. And it's not for us. If we want to create the infrastructure so it can be scaled. And then one clear thing that we also wanted to bring is information to the end customer. You remember the Maria thing? Imagine if she has a certificate like this that clearly says, what did the developer do, you know, to make the project green? I hope this works. Oh, sorry. I'm going to try and use this. So you can see it has information. So, you know, one of the things that happens is that you put all this technology and the end customer doesn't use it. So it's all there in the certificate, essentially. So how are we scaling this up? We are finding partners in some key countries that are growing fast, okay? And it's still, our ambition is to get to 20 countries with deep local presence ourselves, with partnership, of course, with various people across. And you can see that in 5 countries. We're looking to find partnerships in Colombia. We're starting with Kapoor with this great leadership, kind of a memorandum of understanding. But this is right now available at a broader level already. Okay, so that's one of the key things we're doing. The other one is that we're piloting projects. And Amarillo has already put their project forward. And it was a great experience for us and for them. So we're testing this out. We're more than happy to have some of your projects as you do this come forward too. And Chemical can probably help in coordinating this. We are creating a global community, and what I really like as somebody who's been in this field for a while is the kind of projects we're getting, you know. So we're getting the high-end projects in Vietnam, all the way from, you know, Philippines with photovoltaics on the low-end apartments to all sorts, actually. So it's a good mix. And what I love about this is that it's emerging countries taking leadership, you know, and having cross ideas pollinating. Sometimes it is easier to see what Mexico is doing and what India is doing and learn from it than trying to go to the West for all of those ideas. So this is one of the beautiful things that is coming through from the global communities. We also have lots of government partners. We've been working with all of these governments over the years, and also with the Ministry of Housing here and Ministry of Environment or Environment as well. So over the few years here as well on the codes. And the idea is to use everything we've got from finance, codes, voluntary market to really mobilize the market. Our target is that we want to see 20% of all new construction in the next 5 to 7 years to go green. And we can't do this without you. We've already started to build momentum, okay? So a lot of the banks are already using this. The Dutch, the English, the French, the Chinese, that's the Indian one. We're getting a lot more banks using the standard so that they can start to scale this up. And just want to end with one last slide. What do we really want to see? How would we know there's success, right? There will be success when there is talk about actual money in your pocket, finally, as a developer. You know, so as a builder, what I really want you to be able to measure is that, okay, did it mean higher sales? Was there any premium attached to it? Okay, that's one. Or it could be quicker sale. Okay, and we are beginning to collect this data from other markets, but we want to set up this monitoring system in these countries too. But what is really, I mean, I can go through this, but rather than use all the time going through this, in terms of the banking sector, what is really exciting is that already results are coming in that the default rate on loans is 1/3 lower for an energy efficient house versus a non-energy efficient house. That is promising. I know it's not, it may not be a causation yet, but these are the kind of sums we want to get, and we want to talk to your banks, some of which are already our investment partners as IFC, and really start to mobilize the market. We understand that you have your businesses to run as private sector players, and we understand that you also need to get rewarded for this. Hopefully you see this as a collective action, and you see that by making things simpler for you to do, cost efficient, and by coming up with a numbers-based approach, you're able to communicate with the end customer better. Thank you very much.